What's up? It's me, D.W.C, and today I'm going to be doing an MLB 2016 season preview video. Today I'm going to be doing the AL East and talking about how I think each team is going to do, the additions they've made, the moves they made, and how I think they're going to perform this year. Starting off in reverse order with the last place team, the Boston Red Sox, my favorite team. The past 2 years, we had underperforming years, and in typical Red Sox fashion, we went out and spent a lot of money. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about just the overall roster in general. So, the Red Sox have an interesting roster. They got veterans, and they got young guys. We got good potential young players like Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, Blake Swihart, and Eduardo Rodriguez. And then we got underperforming veterans that we signed a year ago in Sandoval and Hanley Ramirez, who has moved to first base, and that's going to be interesting to watch this year. Rotation-wise, the Red Sox are looking pretty decent. They're definitely looking better than last year, with the addition of David Price for a record signing. Yeah, we may have overpaid him, but they wanted their guy, they were determined to get their guy, and now we have an ace on the rotation at least, so there's that. Also behind Price, we have Buchholz, who will hopefully have a good year this year. Then we got Eduardo Rodriguez, who had a good season last year, and hopefully will follow that up with a good year. And then we got Porcello, Kelly, and Elias looking to follow them up in the 4 and 5 spots. For notable moves that the Red Sox made, they traded Wade Miley, who was not really doing anything that useful anyway, for Carson Smith and Elias. So that's a big move. They brought in Carson Smith in the bullpen, who's going to really help them out in the 7th, 8th, whatever inning they bring him in. He's going to be a valuable piece in that bullpen. They signed David Price, like I mentioned, for a record signing, so he's going to be an ace at the top of the rotation. And they added Kimbrel via trade, which is going to shore up the back end of that bullpen, closing out games. As well as signing Chris Young, who crushed left-handed pitching last year, so he's going to be a good platoon guy to have. On to the 4th place finishing Tampa Bay Rays. They finished the year at 80 and 82 last season, and they made some moves, some good, some bad. Not really sure how they'll turn out until the season starts, but I have a feeling that they'll end the year similar to the way they did last year in the 4 or 5 spot in the division, unfortunately for them. The Rays' starting pitching is decent, with Chris Archer leading the way. Unfortunately for them, Alex Cobb has to get Tommy John surgery, so he'll probably be out until August at least. Then they have Drew Smyly, Jake Odorizzi, and Matt Moore, who will be looking to have a bounce-back year this year. Their lineup is average at best. They don't have that much depth in the lineup beyond Corey Dickerson and Evan Longoria. They have Loney, who might have a good year, and Kiermaier, who's pretty unsure, along with Steven Souza, but you're not really sure how any of those guys are going to perform, and you don't know if they're going to have really good years or not. So other than that, their lineup is pretty questionable, and so is their bullpen, especially after trading away Jake McGee. Their bullpen is not looking the best in the league for sure, but it's also not looking like the worst. Notable moves or additions for the Rays: they traded Jake McGee for Corey Dickerson, so they're losing their closer, who's a great reliever, and they're bringing in a good left-handed hitter in Corey Dickerson. They also added Hank Conger to back him up at the plate, which is a good move because Rene Rivera had a bad year last year. So I have a feeling that the Rays will probably finish around or probably just below 500 again this year. Moving on to the 3rd place Baltimore Orioles. Now, the Orioles have a really good lineup when it comes to batting, with Chris Davis, Adam Jones, Matt Wieters, and Manny Machado in there, along with the rest of their lineup. They'll probably have a good year with their batting, but their starting pitching is very questionable. They added Giovanni Gallardo, but other than that, they didn't really make any changes, and their starting pitching does not look that great at all. Notable moves for the Orioles: they signed Giovanni Gallardo, like I mentioned. They re-signed Darren O'Day, and Wieters accepted their qualifying offer. So 2 of their notable moves is bringing back players from last year. They didn't bring in that much other than Gallardo. So I think they're going to have a similar year this year where last year they finished 81-1. This year, I think they're also going to finish around, possibly even below 500 if their pitching lets them down. So I think it's going to be Orioles and Rays, bottom two in the division this year. Moving on to the second place finishing New York Yankees, who earned themselves a wild card last year, ending the year at 87-75. The Yankees made some decent moves this offseason. The Yankees' rotation is decent, but it could definitely use some help. They have Tanaka leading the way, who will hopefully, for the Yankees, have as good of a year as he did in his rookie season. Then they have Michael Pineda, who looked better last year. Eovaldi, Severino, Nova, who are all fairly unproven in the MLB. And then you have CC Sabathia, who's really fallen off over the past years, so you never know how he's going to do this year. The Yankees lineup, they have some power and they have some speed. The power guys, they got Teixeira, Beltran, A-Rod, McCain, and Headley, and Gardner even chipped in a nice few home runs last year. And then their speed guys, they have in the outfield, they got Brett Gardner and Jacoby Ellsbury. So that's a nice mixture of speed and power for them. They can do a nice bit there. The Yankees bullpen, especially the last three in their bullpen, are looking super strong this year with Chapman, Miller, and Betances. The rest of their bullpen, they really just need to perform averagely this year in front of Chapman, Miller, and Betances. Now, the Yankees' notable additions they made in the offseason going into 2016, they got Aroldis Chapman, who was suspended for the start of the season for domestic abuse, which is a pretty controversial signing for them, but I'm sure they don't really care as long as he comes in and pitches well. And they also added Starlin Castro from the Cubs. That's a very good move for the Yankees, who are an old team looking to get younger. Now they got a 25-year-old Castro in the middle infield, who was looked at a few years ago as being one of the highest potential players in the league with the Cubs, so I'm sure they're hoping that he will come into his own this year as a Yankee. And last but not least, we have the division-winning Toronto Blue Jays, who finished the year at 93-69 last year, winning the division and making it back into the playoffs for the first time in a long time, and Blue Jays fans have long awaited the return to the postseason. Now, we all know about the Blue Jays lineup, which is very, very strong, especially in their middle four with Bautista and Encarnacion, AL MVP Josh Donaldson, and Troy Tulowitzki, one of the most highly respected shortstops in the league today, looking to continue to produce for the Blue Jays this year. Their starting pitching, though, is very questionable. They have Marcus Stroman, who I believe will have a strong year this year and will be leading the way on their pitching staff. But after that, it gets a little iffy, and that's where I feel they're going to fall short most this season. After that, they have J-Hap, Jesse Chavez, Gavin Floyd, Drew Hutchinson, R.A. Dickey, who is a knuckleballer. He had one amazing year with the Mets. He's not been that great since he came into the Jays. He had one decent year, but other than that, he's been pretty average for a knuckleball pitcher. And they also have Aaron Sanchez, who's a young pitcher looking to make his mark, as well as Marco Estrada, who they overpaid for in the offseason. Yes, he did perform well for them last year, but I still think he hasn't proven himself enough to get the kind of money that they gave him. But the starting rotation is definitely their weak point going into this year. Notable additions for the Blue Jays. They brought in J-Hap, Jesse Chavez, and Gavin Floyd, like I mentioned, for pitchers who are lower-end starting pitchers, who I guess you can put into the bullpen if you need it. They also brought in Pat Venditti, who's a switch pitcher. I'm sure everyone knows about Pat Venditti and his switch pitching ability, which is very valuable, especially if he pitches well with both hands this season. They also added Junior Lake, who's looked at as having pretty decent potential, and I'm sure the Jays hope that he can come in a bench role and produce for them, as well as Darwin Barney, who's a really good fielder. But the Jays' biggest addition this season, in my opinion, was Drew Storen, who's going to come in and most likely be closing out games for them in the bullpen. That's a great addition for them and their bullpen. It'll give Roberto Osuna a little bit extra time to grow and be in that setup role. And along with Cecil and the rest of their bullpen, they're looking pretty solid. So my prediction overall for the AL East is that the Red Sox will win the division. I'm kind of being biased there, being a Red Sox fan, but I feel like the Red Sox will win probably around 88, 89 games, in my opinion, this year and win the division. Then I feel like 2 and 3 are going to be the Jays and Yankees. I feel like they're both going to have similar records at the end of the year, probably around 85 plus wins for them, finishing 2 and 3. And then 4th and 5th are going to be the Tampa Bay Rays and the Baltimore Orioles, who will both probably finish, in my opinion, just around and possibly even a bit below 500. So that's my predictions for the 2016 season for the AL East. That'll do it for this video, and I'll see you next time.